Good morning. Good morning. This informational hearing of the House Children and Youth Committee is called to order. I would ask that you all please silence your cell phones as the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The purpose of this hearing is to take testimony on the importance of family and permanency for older youth in foster care system and the transition to adulthood. Older youth in foster care are often an overlooked population. They can sometimes be more difficult to place with families than younger children, and yet they need family every bit as much as young children. These young people have so much potential, but without critical support during this transitional time, they face outcomes that can be uncertain at best. I welcome the opportunity to learn from our guests and to identify ways that we as a legislature can support and improve the way the system works for older youth. I'd like to thank our panelists for being here today, and especially the young adults who are here to share their firsthand experience and recommendations with us. I would also like to thank Representative Toohill, Vice Chair of this committee, for her work in organizing this important hearing. Chairman Petrarca, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I too would like to thank the committee members for being here and our panelists and invited guests. Certainly a difficult subject, a very important subject when we look at this demographic of older teens or young adults. I agree with the Chairwoman. They need every bit of help that we can give them. And when we look at the foster care system, obviously there is never enough foster families and folks out there to help at this important time of life for all of those involved. So look forward to the testimony, and again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Petrarca. Before we begin, we have a system where many times our emotions run rampant, and we're all human, and that does happen. So we have a 5-minute interval. You'll see it up here. You'll see the yellow light comes on to tell you you're coming to the end of your testimony. We do this because our questions to you are just as important as your testimony to us. So I hope that that's all right with you. We'll give it a try today. And of course, if there are things that need to be said beyond the time limit, you've got it. With that, Ms. Hopkins, would you like to introduce yourself and begin?
Hello. Okay, I'm good. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Chairpersons Bobek and Petrarca and members of the Children and Youth Committee for this opportunity to provide testimony on this important issue of older youth permanency. I'm the Senior Manager of Program and Policy at the Juvenile Law Center. We are the first nonprofit public interest law firm for children in the country. Juvenile Law Center advocates for youth in the child welfare and justice systems. We fight for children in these systems by using an array of strategies which include litigation, appellate advocacy, submission of amicus briefs, policy reform, public education, training, consulting, and strategic communications. At Juvenile Law Center, we also work directly with young people who are impacted by these systems to develop policy strategies and push for system reform. We do this through our youth advocacy program. Founded in 2008, Juvenile Law Center's youth advocacy program has prepared young people ages 15 to 22 to lead advocacy and policy reform efforts in their local communities and beyond. Our youth advocacy program is made up of 2 projects: Juveniles for Justice, which is the project that works with young people who have current or former involvement in the juvenile justice system, and Youth Fostering Change, for young people who are currently or formerly involved in the child welfare system. Today, you will hear from current youth advocates from Youth Fostering Change, Anthony, Kima, and Alexis, and later this afternoon from Jonathan. Our advocates use their lived experience and expertise about the child welfare system to make change and are best suited to testify to you all today about improving permanency outcomes for youth in the child welfare system. In our program, youth advocates develop leadership skills, political knowledge, communication and storytelling skills, and gain a sense of community. By sharing their personal experiences, youth advocates affect policy change through advocacy. Excuse me. By sharing their personal experiences, young people affect policy change through advocacy, media outreach, and public education. Advocates determine a strategy to address an issue they have identified that's important to them based on their experiences. They develop policy recommendations and create campaigns to raise awareness about the issue in their work. Past projects have addressed issues such as higher education for youth in foster care, poor treatment and placement in facilities, involvement in planning and in court proceedings. Last year, Youth Fostering Change focused on the issue of permanency, or family for older youth. In a moment, our young people will lead their presentation to you on this issue. It may come as a shock to you that nationally, each year, about 20,000 youth age out of the foster care system without any permanent family connections. Many of these young people will leave the system and will face challenges with homelessness, gaining willful employment, and continuing to access supportive resources, and overall face challenges to sustaining and supporting themselves. In the state of Pennsylvania, 33%, or 8,639 of Pennsylvania's foster youth are transition age youth. This means young people age 14 to 21. Of these young people, 49% age out of care without any permanent connections to family. 37% will go on to experience homelessness or unstable housing after leaving care. These numbers should be unacceptable in our state. As someone who cares about young people and works in this field, it behooves me to say that we not only have an opportunity to improve the lives of children and youth, but we have an obligation to take action to implement law, policies, and practices that will increase family connections and connect young people to permanent, loving, and supportive families. We must ensure that not one youth ages out of care without the support of a family and permanent connections. I thank you all again for having us here today. I hope that you hear the testimony of Anthony, Kima, and Alexis, and that you are not just moved by their stories, but you are motivated to take their recommendations for change. I have the privilege to work closely with these young people who do truly transformative work. Anthony, Kima, and Alexis are some of my best partners in strategically and thoughtfully thinking about existing laws and policies and how they can be best used or new ones created to drastically change the experiences of young people in the child welfare system. They work tirelessly to push for system reform, using their own stories as a catalyst for change to ensure that other youth with experience in the child welfare system are loved, supported, and grow up happy and healthy adults. I hope that you will continue this work with us to ensure that every child leaves the foster care system to a family where they are treated with dignity and love and care for a lifetime. I know at the end there will be time for questions, and we ask that you all understand that there are some specific questions that may touch on very personal, sensitive moments of the lives of our young people, and some of them may not feel comfortable answering those questions. We ask that you respect that, and we thank you for creating a space that allows young people to feel welcome to share their stories and expertise. Thank you for having us.
Good morning, everybody. I want to start off by thanking Chairpersons Bobak and Bacharka, as well as the members of the Children's and Youth Committee today, just for giving us the opportunity to provide testimony on such an important issue as older youth permanency. So a little background about me. I'm 22. I'm the father of a handsome young man who motivates me to be great every day and to continue the work that I'm doing by fighting for youth with change so that young men like myself and young children like him all have opportunities to enact change on any issue, no matter the barriers placed in our path. I'm also a third-year youth advocate with the Juvenile Law Center and Youth Fostering Change. Youth Fostering Change, or YFC, is an advocacy program at the Juvenile Law Center for youth who are currently or formerly involved in the child welfare system. YFC researches issues affecting young people in foster care and analyzes current advocacy strategies. In 2018, the YFC's project, we focused on older youth permanency. We decided on this topic because many of us had aged out without family or connections to supportive adults. Or we were about to leave the system without gaining permanency and were uncertain about our lives after foster care. It is our belief that all young people deserve permanency and supportive adult connections. Both are not only essential to success in adulthood, but they're also based on our own stories and of our peers in foster care. That's why we created our toolkit, Tools for Success, with recommendations to improve permanency and outcomes for children in foster care, regardless of circumstance or age. This publication identifies some of the challenges we've faced or are still facing as older youth in care. Our publication focuses on what social workers and other working in the child welfare system can do to help support us in finding family. Most of our recommendations draw directly from the memories of our time in care, when those working closest with us did not consider or incorporate our experiences into our permanency planning. This would later prove to be a detrimental thought process that had negative reverberations throughout our lives. For me personally, permanency planning was never a topic my legal or social work team had ever formally introduced. While they sometimes discussed post-secondary educational options with me and may have asked what I envisioned for my best moving out options, these talks were never focused on family or the reality of aging out. Instead, these conversations seemed to be mostly hypothetical, just to get me to think more about my future, but didn't really deal with the reality I was about to face when I left care and I would be on my own. Having the ability to steer your life's direction is often the most daunting aspect of growing up for most young adults. But as a kid in foster care, this is all I craved. Having a permanency plan that was cohesive and had long-lasting supports and reliable familial infrastructure would have allowed me to not only be motivated, but allowed me to picture my future as an adult. It would have ensured I created goals that reflected my interests and strengths and that I had support of family and adults who could help me get there. To improve permanency outcomes for older youth in the foster care system, we recommend focusing on relational and legal permanency. During the permanency process, legal permanency is when someone takes legal responsibility for you as a parent or a guardian. Relational permanency is when strong, lasting relationships with caring adults. By both pursuing legal and relational permanency options for youth in the foster care system, it is a vital and key aspect to having stability and multiple supportive connections. Having this equal focus on both legal and relational permanency is beneficial to youth's overall legal standing. Doing this together provides them with additional positive, consistent support and guidance as we grow up. Examples of relational permanency can include connecting youth with supportive kin who may be unable to provide financial or supportive housing, but may provide them with connection to their culture, their family, or simply a willing ear or shoulder to cry on. This should include connecting youth to other siblings or extended family members that offer a secure network of love and support. To put it simply, to limit a young person to one group or one individual who's able to provide purely material things can cut off the potential for a supportive network that more closely resembles the many adult connections that youth may have when they don't enter the foster care system. It is my belief that a caring and supportive team backing a youth not only shows them that they deserve to have a loving, safe environment and that there are adults who care for them, but to be removed from the home you grew up in is a terribly traumatic event for any young person. However, there is still time to do better. There's still time to ensure that the thousands and thousands of kids entering the system get quality treatment, that they never leave care without permanent connections and resources to live happy, healthy lives. I hope you all consider the recommendations that we offer today. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that others like you who are in a position to really change the system continue to have an open ear, continue to listen to the children you hope to serve, listen to the youth in the foster care system who are now adults, listen to the young people who have experienced the system and all of its flaws, listen to the workers who help support these youth, and to the resource parents who have seen with their own eyes the transforming power of love. And please know that your decisions today matter to the youth whose lives you have the potential to change. Thank you again.
I want to thank Chairpersons Bobek and Pacharka and members of the Youth Committee for the opportunity to provide testimony on the important issue of older youth permanency. I am an advocate from Youth Fostering Change. I have been in the program for 2 years. Last year, we chose to create a project on permanency, and we are testifying today because we do not want other youth to experience what we have. Permanency is important to all youth, but especially for youth aging out of care and for those who may not have anywhere stable to go. Not having a stable home can cause more damage and traumatic experiences for them. Permanency is also important because it means ensuring that a child can be in one safe, loving home. No one deserves to be placed in foster home after foster home, causing more trauma. Youth deserve to have a trustworthy family that looks at them like their own. For me, when I was in care, I never stayed in one spot. I was always being bounced around from home to home. It wasn't fair because it's something youth have no control over. No youth should ever be in an unsafe home or environment, constantly being moved around or placed in large group homes where they don't have or make any connections with caring adults. To ensure that youth no longer experience what we did when we were in foster care, we recommend facilitating placement stability for foster youth to gain permanency. To achieve permanency, it should be known that foster youth needs to be placed in a safe, loving home environment. They should be in stable living arrangements where they are secure, treated with respect, cared for, and loved. Youth shouldn't experience unexpected changes in where they live without being notified. Youth should be aware of where they are going to live in advance, including the location when they will arrive, with whom they will stay with, and what kind of place they will live in. Professionals who work with youth and care should also speak with the youth directly to learn what they want and need in a family. If you ask us, we will tell you. If a youth appears to reject the idea of permanency, caseworkers shouldn't give up. Instead, ask the youth why they are hesitant instead of just ending the conversation. They may be hesitant because of past negative experiences that they've had. Professionals should then continue to follow up with the youth about how they feel about where they're living, whether it's a foster home or a group home. They should ask the youth about what's working and any challenges in the placement. Both are key to building trust and achieving permanency. Ensuring that youth are in safe, caring environments is key to youth achieving lifelong permanency. Having stability enables you to develop relationships with people in their community and maintain supportive relationships that last beyond care. Youth have a better chance at gaining permanency when they are in consistent placements where they are respected, listened to, and connected to the resources they need. From my story, having placement stability could have changed many things in my life for the better. I wish someone would have asked me what was going on and ensured that I was protected in my homes and that I wasn't constantly being moved around. I am now at a place in my life where I understand how not having much stability has impacted my life and how important it is for other youth in foster care. This is why we all chose to work on permanency this year, and I truly hope that you all have listened to what we shared today and our recommendations from Tools for Success as a guide for professionals and policymakers like yourself to implement policies, laws, and practices that ensure youth have placement stability and permanency before they leave the foster care system. The decisions that you make moving forward can drastically change the outcomes for youth in foster care. Thank you for listening to me and my peers testify today. We look forward to continuing this work with you all. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alexis. First, I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank Chairperson Bobek and Petrarca and the members of the Children and Youth Committee for the opportunity to provide my testimony on the important issue of older youth permanency. I'm an advocate from Youth Foster and Change and have been in the program for 2 years. When I first joined Youth Foster and Change, I was still in the foster care system. During that time, I had to deal with many hardships, but I wanted to work closely with professionals to make the well-needed improvements in the system. I especially wanted to gain this experience as I'm currently in college and hoping to put myself in a position of power one day to be able to make the policy changes that I want for future foster youth. Based on my experiences and meeting with people who work with foster youth, it is evident that while there are positive changes being made, there still needs to be many improvements to largely impact the lives of all foster youth. I believe we can do so much more together. I'm proud to do this work with JOC because it allows me to tell my story while fighting for future youth encountering the system and give them a better fighting chance at a good life. It also helps me network and to be heard by professionals who are in a position to make a difference like you all. As Anthony shared, last year we focused our project on permanency. The work we did on the permanency toolkit is so important because everyone's definition of permanency is different. And with the toolkit, we as youth with experience in the foster care system can shed light on what is really needed to better permanency outcomes for older youth. Our needs do not stop at 18 or 21. Permanency is lifelong. Think about your own lives. I'm sure many of you still go home to your parents and interact with your family members, and you're all well over 18. Having those connections for a lifetime is something everyone should be entitled to. That's permanency. Before I share some of our recommendations for change from Tools for Success, I would like to share some pieces of my story with you all. I entered the system at age 10 and moved around a lot. For the first 7 years I was in foster care, I was in 15 different homes, 2 group homes, and a shelter. Between the ages of 17 and 20, I was homeless. After a year and a half of trying to get back into care, I re-entered at the age of 20. I'm 21 now, and I never anticipated how hard it would be to get back in the system. It was really tough and emotional. I was not prepared to fully be independent and be on my own. It also didn't help that the team of people who were supposed to have my best interest in mind didn't start my transition planning until 3 months before, despite me constantly asking them for help earlier. During these 3 months, I felt lost, stressed, and abandoned, and like the system was saying to me, hey, our job is done. I fully aged out at 21 years of age. This process barely supported my needs, and I didn't feel good about it at all, especially since I have already gone through such a tumultuous time in care. Now at 21, I unfortunately do not have many supportive adults or consistent people in my life. I believe that if I would have received assistance earlier and helped to build and maintain these connections, I would have felt more prepared and control of my current situation and the direction of my life. My experience in the foster care system is why I know how important permanency is for all youth. I think it is especially vital for older youth who may be facing new transitions in their lives. Everyone should care about permanency because everyone needs somebody or some type of support. People should think about the system as if these youth could be their own children. Think about your own lives. At our ages, would you feel comfortable transitioning and adulting without any assistance? You all also wouldn't let your child or want your child to go through difficult journeys and life changes by themselves. So why should any youth in an unfortunate situation have to go through life without support? Many foster youth do not have control over why they're being put in the system, so feeling like someone cares enough to want to support you and advise you can make all the difference. Now that you heard my story and have a little bit more background on the issue, I want to take this time to offer some of our recommendations to improve permanency outcomes for older youth. I hope in time these recommendations will be used to help fix this issue. We recommend communicating the importance of permanency and meaningfully engaging youth in the permanency planning process. To have successful permanency planning, youth need to be on board, invested, and clear about their permanency goals. Listen to youth's views and concerns. Engaging youth starts with including them in discussions and preparing them for planning meetings and court dates. To do this effectively, you must be mindful of previous trauma and adolescence development when communicating about a youth's case planning and when building relationships with supportive adults. Think about how meetings are planned, including the logistics for youth to attend and fully participate. We believe the recommendations can help to positively impact youth by insisting workers start the permanency planning earlier and include youth in an individualized process from beginning to end. It will help youth be more expressive, involved in their own life, and help them to be more self-sufficient. Positively engaging youth in this process also allows for professionals to build trusting relationships with youth to make it easier to work together to achieve permanency. It is crucial for you to understand how you as lawmakers can make sure youth in this system can transition into adulthood with proper resources and support. We believe this tool and all of you can play a key part in ensuring youth in the foster care system achieve permanency and never leave the system without support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You all did an excellent job, and thank you for sharing your stories. Are there any questions from the members? I would like to start. If you would be so kind, and I know some of you did mention it, when did you enter the system, and how many placements did you go through until you aged out? I think you started with 8 years old, did you say?
I actually entered at 10, and I was in, throughout that first 7 years, I was in about 15 different homes, 2 group homes, and a shelter, and then I became homeless. I was like moving couch to couch.
So And how typical is that?
It's very typical for a youth in foster care. It happens a lot more than people see or expect.
So you were in a shelter, homeless shelter?
Yes.
Is where you, thank you. Yes.
I entered care when I was born, technically, and then I was adopted twice, and then I entered care again, and then I aged out. Well, no, I didn't age out. I actually signed myself out when I turned 18, and I can't even count how many foster homes and group homes I was in. I just know that it was a lot.
And Alexis, right now, where are you and what are you doing, if you can answer that?
Right now, I have my own apartment. I'm working. I'm no longer in care. I'm 20 years old. I have a son. I'm just trying to do what I got to do.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Anthony?
Yeah, I entered care at the top of my 16th birthday, and then remained in care going to 3 different foster homes until I was unified at 18. After that, I experienced homelessness to different effects in different varying degrees, just due to the fitness of the situation I was reunified back into, but currently I am in a very stable position.
Congratulations.
Thank
Proud of you. Yes. Representative Otten?
I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories. They're important to hear, incredibly impactful. I wanted to ask about, have you guys, as young people, had any access to organizations? So I used to be a counselor for youth who were infected and affected with HIV and AIDS. And so years ago, many of those children were in foster care. And because we had that community network for them through their childhood, through camp, and programs we had throughout the year, as some of them were bounced around through foster care, we were able to follow them, be a support system for them, and as they've aged out of foster care, be a community for them. And so I just wonder, have any of you had access to organizations that support youth who are dealing with difficult situations that may be able to give you some of that community identity and purpose that is really difficult to kind of experience in a foster care system? And you know, what kind of access have you had to support communities?
Yeah, I'll start. So firstly, when entering the system, I was introduced to the Achieving Independence Center in Philadelphia, which is essentially a place where you can kind of get resources in terms of life skills or financial management, things to that effect, which kind of did get me a good starting point in terms of not only dealing with, you know, this big legal team that I have now, and dealing with the different life changes that come with, you know, the 16 years of being out of the system and now transitioning into it. Additionally, I also was in, or still am currently in, the Juvenile Law Center, which just made me more aware and conscientious of the issues that do affect youth in the system, that recognize that, you know, this isn't an isolated incident. This is a, you know, an epidemic to some extent. It's something that kind of does affect youth on a mass level, and being able to not only fight for change on the ground, but to also be a part of a team that does high impact litigation cases for youth who may be dealing with, you know, very traumatic placements or very traumatic, just systematic marginalization of youth within the system. It does give me that community, and does make me feel like not only am I making an impact on a very small level, but also I'm a part of a huge wave that I feel like definitely is gaining traction as these issues get more and more publicized.
A point of clarification also, if I may, before we go on. Adopted 2 times, Lakeem? Is it Lakima? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Did you say that?
Yes.
And what happened? May we, is that something we may ask, or?
Yeah, I'll speak on it. Well, when I was first adopted, it was a lot of like stuff going on in the home that wasn't supposed to be happening. I was adopted with my older sister. It was me and 2 other boys in there. So it was 2 girls and 2 boys, and I'm pretty sure you get what I'm trying to say. So that's what happened in the first home. And then in the second one, I was getting abused and stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing that with us. That emphasizes even more how much help this situation needs with aging out. Thank you. Thank you. A question?
Quick question, Marcia? Quick question
Marcia.
for you. You know, obviously when we talk about, I think, foster care and we look at the issues and the concerns, maybe additional funding in some of the programs would certainly help. But to me, it seems like this is a bigger issue than just funding.
Yes.
What else could we be doing more specifically, or what else should we be looking at to help with this permanency question or
Sure. One, I think changing some of the laws and policies. I think there's also an issue with oversight. So kind of the way that we run in Philadelphia, we have our DHS system and then we have CUAs, so places that contract out to provide the service to young people in the foster care system. And there's often everybody's standard of what they do in Philadelphia is very different, and I'm just using us as an example because that's the the one I'm most familiar with. But I think when agencies have so many different standards of how they do things, so one young person can be in one organization or in one county and things can go flawlessly and really well, and then you can be in another county or a different state or another agency and things don't go so well for young people. So often for myself, I think that there needs to be some specific laws or policies in place to address those issues of oversight and the way in which agencies or counties are administering and taking care of our young people, because the quality doesn't seem to be equitable across for everyone. And we know that, I mean, in the state of Pennsylvania, you can go to varying counties and see the level of care looks very different in certain places. And so, in my opinion, I think that's one of the highest things, or one of the biggest problems, is that it's not consistent across the board, and there needs to be some significant changes made at the state level, then locally at the counties, and kind of trickling down from folks who are overseeing the process.
Okay, and as we move forward after this hearing, any specific changes and ideas that you have, I would ask that you share them with us. And as I begin to learn more and more about the children and youth situation in Pennsylvania, it does seem clear to me that things vary greatly from county to county. And I think we do have to get a handle on that and try to streamline this process. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Alexis, did you want to say something?
It's fine. It's fine.
No, it's very important to us, so if you'd like to share, we appreciate it.
I was going to answer the lady's question and say basically what he said, that there's the Achievement Independence Center and there's also Juvenile Law Center, but the Achievement Independence Center does like the minimum, so we definitely get support, but it's not as much as we need. And like Anthony was saying, Juvenile Law Center definitely was a crucial point for me. I don't really know how to explain it, but I feel like they helped me out a lot. And it's like he said, it's like a community. If I feel welcomed and, like it's somewhere I should be. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for this panel? All right, Representative Polonchak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You both need to be very proud of yourselves today, because what you did has brought a lot of light. That was very powerful testimony. I'm going to go back. I have two kids that I'm going to talk about this with. We take for granted that we don't have these issues. I want you to know my office is right above this. If you ever need a cup of coffee, you want to come hang out, or I live outside of Philly, same thing. I want you to know that we're not going to forget this, and we're going to push on for that. But please pass the Lakima as well. This was powerful stuff, and thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that.
Representative Glenn.
Hi, I also want to thank you for being here today and sharing your story. I'm new, I'm a freshman, I'm just learning all of this information. And so my question is, do we have any data or information on what county, what area of the state has the best practice for fostering?
Great question, and that's
Is that the
something we-
next people, maybe?
Perhaps. And if not, I would task you with that. No, but that's something certainly that this committee can investigate.
Okay, I would like to have that investigated, please, and maybe we could get some feedback from the children, because that seems to be very powerful feedback. So, thank you.
Representative Kale?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming here today. I really do appreciate it. Very quick question. Is everyone on this panel from the same county? Everyone from Philadelphia?
Philadelphia,
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? Any other questions? Representative Toohill?
You did wonderful, Alexis, Lakima, Anthony, and Jonathan in the back. He's supporting you, right? You all did amazing. Your life experiences are so important, because without you coming and advocating for change like you're doing today, things will just go on and they will be ignored, and it will continue to just be the same cycle again and again for all the children born after all of us. So really powerful. And I wanted Representative Polinchuk to know that we're spending the day together because we do have, it's Foster Care Awareness Month. And so Chairwoman Boback is going to be on the House floor doing a resolution for Foster Care Awareness Month, and in Pennsylvania and nationally. And then we're going to be having a press conference, bipartisan, with everyone at noon. And then we were trying to have lunch together, so you would get that cup of coffee then. Okay? All right.
No other questions from committee? With that being said, we want to thank you. Please know your testimony did not fall on deaf ears. That's why we called you in today to share, and we appreciate it more than you know how much you shared with us your personal stories and your recommendations to make our Commonwealth better for children and young youth who will come after you. So please know that our sincerity is there, and thank you so much. You did a great job. May we have a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we invite you to stay and hear the rest of the testimonies. Thank you. With that, we're going to hear from our research and policy panel. We'll give everybody a minute to make themselves comfortable. Rachel Miller is Pennsylvania Partnerships for Children. She's going to talk about data and research. Jenny Pompner, can you pronounce that for us? Kempner, thank you. Juvenile Law Center, she's going to discuss policy responses. Who would like to start?
I will.
Okay, Rachel, thank you.
So first, I would just, again, really like to thank the youth for being so brave and honest and transparent in their testimony today. Hopefully I can make it through my testimony because it was so powerful. Chairwoman Boback, Chairman Petrarca, Vice Chair Toohill, and distinguished members of the committee, I would first like to thank you all for allowing me to testify in today's incredibly important hearing. My name is Rachel Miller, and I am the Child Welfare Policy Director at Pennsylvania Partnerships for Children. PPC is a statewide, independent, nonpartisan advocacy organization focusing on the improvement of health, education, and well-being of all children and youth across the Commonwealth. We are the only statewide advocacy organization with a policy agenda that spans the entire life of a child, and child welfare has been at the heart of our organization for over a decade. Prior to my work at PPC, I worked at York County Office of Children, Youth, and Family for 10 years. I served in the role of in-home and placement caseworker, direct service supervisor, quality improvement manager, as well as the educational liaison. I have firsthand experience serving children and families directly through the Child Welfare County Agency, as well as a systems perspective on the foster care system in the state of Pennsylvania. Today, I hope to set the stage for you on a discussion of where policy and practice improvements are needed by discussing the data and outcomes through two very specific sources, as well as the research and outcomes of the nature of the transition of adulthood for children in foster care. The first is PPC's annual State of Child Welfare Report, which provides a 5-year analysis on how Pennsylvania fares with practices around child safety, placement, and permanency. This analysis is our contribution to improving Pennsylvania's child welfare system, not only providing county-level data, but also statewide and geographic trends. The second is the Annie E. Casey Fostering Youth Transitions Report, which highlights outcomes for foster care youth transitioning from foster care to adulthood. And both sources confirm that while the Commonwealth has made great strides in improving outcomes for this population, we still have a lot of more work to do. As of September 30th, 2018, over 25,000 children and youth were placed in Pennsylvania's foster care system, with the placement population increasing by 13% over the past 5 years. And while we often correlate foster care with young, vulnerable children, the truth is 1/3 of our foster care population are transition age youth. Those are those youth that are ages 13 to 21 who are transitioning from adolescence to adulthood. Positively, through historical advocacy efforts and emphasis on improving outcomes for this age group, the rate of transition age youth entering foster care as a first-time entry has decreased by approximately 10% over the past 10 years. We can speculate that this is an indication of more preventative front-end services being provided through the investigation and case acceptance process in an effort to avoid initial placements. However, we really need to dissect the data to see if the policies enacted are really having a positive impact on this population. So compared to the national average, Pennsylvania has a higher rate of transition age youth in foster care. According to the Annie E. Casey report and confirmed by PPC's State of Child Welfare, transition age youth in Pennsylvania make up 33% of the foster care population compared to nationally, which is 25%. And while first-time entries into foster care continue to decrease for older youth, almost half of foster care population that returns home subsequently re-enters care. Additionally, 42% of Pennsylvania's older youth population experience 3 or more placement settings. That means they're forced to move within multiple areas, either foster care or group settings. They have to become acclimated to new caretakers, new communities, new schools, and essentially re-beginning their lives all over again. Every move a child makes is one more traumatic episode in addition to the circumstances that caused their placement to begin with. It is hoped that whether youth has a first-time entry into foster care or a subsequent placement, that they are placed with the most family-like setting and ideally with kin. We know that children and youth are best raised by their families. Family-based settings are often defined as foster homes, kinship homes, or specialized settings such as medical foster care or therapeutic foster care. The least preferred setting for children and youth is congregate care, which includes settings such as group homes and residential treatment. These settings are institutional in nature, which has dormitory-style living, and the youth are raised by staff rather than a parental figure. Realistically, research shows that group care is rarely effective in addressing behavioral or clinical issues and often is harmful to the youth. Placement in group care prevents youth from having the opportunity to form relationships with supportive adults and people who can become permanent resources, and it often separates them from activities and people in their natural communities. The use of congregate care should be rare, and when it is used, should be short-term. All efforts should be made to promote a nurturing and family-like setting with supportive services within their own community. When we look at the data, almost half of transition-age youth were placed in congregate care versus a family-like setting in 2018. And recent data also shows that youth of color of all age groups are least likely to be placed in family settings. This data and research on group care has significant negative implications for transition-age youth. Permanency planning and service delivery is required as soon as the child enters placement and is to be provided until that youth exits to permanency. Permanency is just one goal of the child welfare system, and ideally, youth return to their own homes or are placed with caring adults who commit to becoming their family. The support, guidance, and nurturing of family is also essential for youth to make a successful transition to adulthood. While it's probably no surprise, family and permanency are vital to the transition to adulthood. Counties have flexibility in the services that they can provide to achieve permanency. One key way Pennsylvania has chosen to do that is to deliver services through the statewide adoption network, also known as SWAN. There are multiple permanency services offered through SWAN, and they are all contracted through providers with the County Child Welfare Agency that assist the child with understanding permanency and breaking down barriers to achieving it. I will briefly touch on some of the services offered through SWAN. You have a family profile, which is often referred to as a home study and provides a comprehensive overview of the family dynamics and assists with matching children to families. And you also have a child profile, which is a comprehensive overview of that child's life history. You also have child preparation, which includes a process of multiple individual sessions that helps children work through difficulties that can often become barriers to achieving permanency. And then we also have child-specific recruitment that assists with locating permanent resources, including family finding efforts, and you have adoption finalization and post-permanency services. These services are critical to ensuring that a child is prepared for the permanency process and towards expediting permanency planning. SWAN services have been very effective in helping youth find permanency, and many counties have been innovative in ensuring that the services meet the needs of older youth. However, data included in a report submitted to the legislature in 2016 by the Department of Human Services showed that older youth with the permanency plan of another planned permanent living arrangement, also known as APLA, are receiving these services in small numbers, reducing their chances of achieving permanency. All children placed through the Child Welfare Agency are required to have a court-ordered goal, primary goal, and concurrent goal, which are both worked on at the same time. The goals that can be assigned are reunification, adoption, permanent legal custodianship, placement with a fit and willing relative, and APLA. All goals other than APLA indicate that the child is moving towards permanency being finalized in a family-based setting. APLA often correlates with residing in group settings and the message that permanency will never be achieved. It ultimately produces poor outcomes for youth, which frequently results in lack of lifelong connections to them to help transition to adulthood and navigating life's most major milestones. 25% of transition-age youth population currently have a court-ordered goal of APLA. When we look at outcomes for youth at the age of 21, the Annie E. Casey Foundation has confirmed that foster youth in Pennsylvania have poorer outcomes than peers who reside with their biological families. Specifically, only 44% of youth have part-time or full-time employment at age 21. Only 75% have obtained higher education or a GED, compared to 92% of their peers, and only 63% have stable housing. Beginning at age 14, once a child enters out-of-home placement, the County Child Welfare Agency is required to assume transition planning. A transition plan is a needs assessment in primary life domains that assist with developing a formal plan to provide a successful transition to adulthood. Some of the areas covered include life skills, education, housing, mental health, behavioral health, amongst others. The plan is intended to assure linkage to appropriate services to teach the youth the skills in those areas to be most successful. And these plans are to be updated every 6 months and reviewed during the 6-month permanency review hearings before the dependency court. Additionally, the youth must be engaged in this plan, as you've heard testified by our youth today, in order to obtain their views on how to move forward to self-sufficiency and independence. And while I've just provided a large amount of data for you to all process today, I'm hoping that this provides a broad snapshot of transition-age youth in placement in Pennsylvania as a further basis for discussion on our panel. Historically, Pennsylvania has been among the leaders in the country on meeting the needs of supporting transition-age youth in foster care. As we approach the 20-year anniversary of the federal law, the Chafee Act, that highlighted the needs of transition-age youth, a wealth of data and research shows that older youth in the child welfare system continue to leave our system in large numbers without connections to family and are at risk of poor outcomes. We are faced with a challenge to do more and do better by these young children. I trust that Pennsylvania will meet the challenge and continue to be a leader in investing and supporting these youth. I'm sure you're all eager to hear thoughts and ideas of where we can all go to continue to build upon our work that is already being implemented at the state and local county child welfare agencies. I'm really excited for you to hear about potential policy reform from Ms. Jennifer Pekapner from the Juvenile Law Center. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak today before this committee. As the data shows in PPC's State of Child Welfare Report and confirmed through the Annie E. Casey Foundation, we still have a lot more work to do to improve outcomes for older youth in foster care. And we hope that you take this data into consideration as you hear the rest of the presentation. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Next, we have Ms. Pope-Kempner, and she is with the Juvenile Law Center.
Thanks so much. And thank you to the chairpersons and the committee members. We really feel your engagement in this discussion and really do appreciate it. As you heard in the earlier panel, I work at Juvenile Law Center. I'm lucky to work with Marcia and the youth advocates. As Marcia said, and I'm sorry I have to give the little spiel, Juvenile Law Center is the first nonprofit public interest law firm for children in the country. We've worked on issues related to the juvenile justice and child welfare system for over 40 years. And we work really hard with stakeholders and lawmakers and young people to really just improve these systems and make sure that when youth and families have to come into contact with them, we really support and help them thrive. So we thank you for giving the opportunity to share our experience, which includes representing kids, but also working with young people as advocates. As you heard from the young people and Rachel's testimony, it's really clear that we are leaving young people behind. Older youth in the foster care system are really aging out to poor outcomes, and as you heard, they're really experiencing treatment that we would not find acceptable for our own young people, our kids in our own home. And as Rachel said, and the topic of this hearing really is permanency. And while that's a word child welfare uses, we've said it over and over, that's really just family. And that really is so important when we talk about the transition to adulthood. Being connected with family is probably the most important thing. We definitely need kids to have an education, learn skills, but without the support of family, that's really the foundation that gets you through those hard times and helps you see the future in front of you. So we really do think for Pennsylvania and across the country, permanency family is the top transition to adult issue for youth in foster care. As I said today, you did hear from young people about the practice changes that need to happen, and the questions I think that Representative Picharka and others have asked is, we do want people to change practice, but we do feel that policy and law changes need to be made if we really want to see any meaningful difference. Because unfortunately, the data that Rachel mentioned and that you all do have in your packets is data we've seen year after year. So if we do want to change things, we're going to have to do things differently. And I don't want to repeat things because we did provide a lot of information about aging out, but it is really important to understand what that means and thinking about what kids need between about 16 and their mid-20s. What we are seeing is about 50% of youth aging out, meaning they are on their own. We have not fulfilled our promise to them, which is when we took them into the system that we're either going to help you get home or we're going to find family for you through adoption, guardianship, or kinship care. So these are youth who we really have not fulfilled our promise to, and then we do say, bye, make it on your own. And as Alexis said, young people are very aware of that feeling. And again, thinking about, for some of you, we all made the transition to adulthood. Many of you probably still do have young people that are growing up in your homes, and you are probably very acutely aware of how much your support means and how important it is probably to you. You want to give it to them. It's your privilege. It's what family's about. But we do kind of leave these youth without those supports and say, but we expect you to do everything on your own. And we know and shouldn't be surprised what the result is. And it is youth really experiencing outcomes like homelessness, like reliance on public assistance. And it's really because we are asking them to do something that we're not asking other young people to do. And I think we do want to make clear that these young people have so much potential, as you saw, and so much talent. They can meet all the challenges we want to put in front of them, but they need the same support all young people need. What I do want to talk about today is how we can change law and policy to potentially make these changes. We have in your materials, the young people mentioned the tools for success, so that is in your packet, and that is an excellent guide they put together, which really speaks to how caseworkers and people working with young people can change their practice to prioritize and make sure family is an issue that they're really focusing on. What we want to talk about is some of the legal and policy changes now that might help support that practice, but also make sure that practice is the norm. In your packets, we have one of the materials that we produced in collaboration with PPC that has, it's called Fostering Successful Transitions, Laying the Groundwork for Change Through Law and Policy Reform. That has more detail, but I just want to summarize kind of the 3 policy areas that we hope that the committee will consider. The first is related to expanding efforts to find and support kin and relative caregivers. We know that if we can place or keep kids with their family, that is how they're going to do best. They're going to do best because they won't have as much disruption, and ideally kin is able to help the parents of the child with reunification. But at the very least, they are able to provide that supportive home and be connected with that young person and provide that stability. One way that we can improve those types of placements for young people is we do have a requirement that we have to have family finding, which means we just identify and locate kin. That's for every youth who comes in the child welfare system. But what we're seeing is that that's not happening in large numbers for older youth. So we do think that that is a good practice. It's among the strengths in Pennsylvania. But what we need is more accountability and more guidance in making sure that happens. So we do really think that it would make a great improvement if the law was more clear on making sure there's accountability, that older youth are receiving family finding, that there aren't exceptions to providing it, and that there's a requirement that youth are notified and engaged. We can't understate at all how important it is to involve young people. You saw today, even in these very heated and emotional issues, their voice is so important. If they don't understand what's going on, if they do not feel involved, you're not going to be able to form a trusting relationship, and you're not going to be able to make as much headway as you want in casework. And you will face situations like you did today, where you will have to work through a reaction or emotion, but we can help youth get through that and move them through that process, and that is our obligation. So we need to engage them, and family finding is something that they really do want, but they want to be educated about it and involved in it. And we also really think it's important that once we identify family and help place youth with family, we need to do more to support kin and relatives so they can care for children in the way we want them to be cared for. We have an example of great programs that PPC did much advocacy around Act 89, which created the Kinship Navigator program. That is a great beginning, but we do need more because you heard from the panel earlier, placement stability is crucial. We need to make sure families have what it takes and the support they need to provide good care for often young people who have gone through a lot, and we want the families to have the support and not feel like they're alone. The second area of recommendation is accountability for permanency services. You heard from Rachel, we have a lot of great permanency services in Pennsylvania, the statewide adoption network, and we have some great people from Diacon, I think still Rick Azzaro, who can tell more about those SWAN services. But these are these great services, child-specific recruitment, where we recruit kin or other caring adults to help provide support for young people. Child profile, where the child starts to think about who they are connected with. These are services we have, but as Rachel mentioned, when we look at the numbers, for whatever reason, older youth are not getting them in the numbers that we need them to. If you look at the data, it's for all those three services, it's in the under 10%. So this means there's services that we know are effective, that we know are good, and are available in the state, and older youth are just not receiving them. So we do think what that tells us is to make sure those things are provided to young people, there does need to be more accountability. And I am saying that throughout this testimony, but I think it is true, because one of the things that we really want to emphasize is we've got a lot of good things going on in Pennsylvania, but at the end of the day, we are not ensuring that older youth receive them. So putting in accountability mechanisms to make sure youth are getting those permanency services in their case plan, through the court reviews, we are making sure services we have are utilized efficiently. We want to make sure these things that are there for young people and are effective are actually something that they receive. The third area, again, is accountability for outcomes. You heard from Rachel and you heard from the youth. The numbers of youth aging out and them being at risk for homelessness, for unemployment, are extremely high. And it really does, I think, break everyone's heart and really shock people to say the people who deal with the consequences of that is the young people, not us. And we, as a system, as a community, are responsible. And we do think that the law should be changed to make sure that there is accountability for outcomes. When we demand certain outcomes, I think we will have people change practice and we'll see resources maybe used more efficiently, used more creatively. And so some of the recommendations we think there should be is, we all, I think, in the room would say no youth should age out to homelessness, that should be unacceptable. But if we really do think that's the case, there should be a prohibition in our Child Welfare Code, in our Juvenile Act, that cannot occur. We also think there should be accountability in terms of data collection. We should have all these numbers that we're hearing about youth aging out to homelessness, employment, access to higher education. We are just looking at that data. We are not asking necessarily that the counties report that and that there's some consequence if the data does not look like what we would like it to look. And by consequences, I simply mean things like remediation plans, technical assistance. Again, we have a lot of great people in this audience who are able to provide great technical assistance, great advice. You asked the question about who provides great services in this state. We've got a couple of those people in the audience. And I think that we have, like I said, a lot of strength within the Commonwealth, but that the end of the day, we are seeing year after year the same results. And I do think that does mean that we can't just keep saying that we intend to do better, that we care about these young people, that we really have to show in law and policy that we expect more. And we do stand, I know PPC, Juvenile Law Center, and many of the advocates that are in the audience, and like I said, there are many, we all are working together. We want to help and work with lawmakers to make these changes, but we hope that we can leave this hearing and not just have moved you, but have you said, we need to show the youth that we do expect more. We want to provide them the same things we want for our children, and we're willing to enact law and policy to make that. But we will help you in any way we can, and really do want to collaborate with you. And if in the packets, there's a lot of material. The data is in there. There's data about moves, how many moves older youth have on average in the foster care system, information on outcomes, and we're happy to provide more. Again, we definitely are very grateful to many of the people in the audience, and many of the people in the audience work with transition age youth, and are among the kind of leaders that we hope you'll look to when you're looking at who does this well and what can we replicate. Thank you. I'm sorry I went over time.
That was read for, since you started, it was too interesting, we didn't even bother with it, so thank you. May I ask, on average, and if you could take me through the spectrum from birth until aging out, how many caseworkers or how many juveniles, children are per caseworker?
Currently, the regulations indicate a 1 caseworker to 30. The interpretation on whether that's 30 families versus 30 children differs. There is currently some rewriting of those regulations to reduce the numbers from 1 to 30 to 1 to 10. That's been worked on for almost 2 years now, so we're hopeful that will be coming soon, but the caseload issue does impact caseworker staff retention.
Overwhelming. And as the students, the children, as they get to that age where they would be aging out, are the ratios basically the same?
It depends on county to county. Some counties have very specific units that work with transition age youth or youth that have the goal of APLA, where some just have general case management units. So it really differs from county to county and the numbers of cases that they have coming in.
Thank you. Chairman Petrarca?
Jenny, quick question. You say that we should not allow children to age out and to age out into homelessness. And I think we can all agree with that, but what does that mean? I mean, what can we do? What should we do? How big of an issue is that? How expensive is that? What does it mean?
Well, yeah, it is a complicated issue. I think that by making a law and policy prohibition on it, you will start to see a lot of the things that are actually in law already done more efficiently and more accountability around those. So for example, Rachel mentioned we're supposed to be starting to plan for the transition regardless of whether that's to being on your own, which we hope is not the case, or family at 14, we're supposed to be starting to look at what kind of skills, what kind of connections and support do you need as you get closer to adulthood at 14. But what you heard from Alexis is rarely does it start that early, and rarely is it done in a very comprehensive way. Because really, again, bringing everyone back to their own children, you are planning for your child's adulthood well before 14. You are thinking about school, you are thinking about their interests, their skills, but you are really probably thinking about what are they going to be as an adults. I really want them to, flourish and thrive. And you aren't even thinking, I hope they're not homeless, but you are thinking, I hope they have what they need to make it on their own. And so I do think that it does seem, and I know counties will be very upset if you say we're going to have a prohibition on homelessness, how can we control that? But what that is our expectation, and I think it will make counties work more efficiently, and I think it will make them pull on other resources. Because I will say, I do think, under our laws, the Child Welfare Agency is ultimately responsible for these outcomes, but they should be pulling on and collaborating with other agencies and the community to meet this obligation, but they do need to be the leaders. But in terms of things that we could support, we really could be making sure that, we are helping youth do this transition planning, and that we are reviewing these case ones, that we have more of oversight of, is the planning being done? Can we identify what are the challenging or trouble spots, and can we address them? And I don't think that we are doing that at this time. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect at 18 or 21, but I think we could do much more to give young people a fighting chance at 18 or 21 that they're going to be in a better place. I think, we're talking here today about kind of reforms within the child welfare system, but I think that we, in the kind of spirit of collaboration with other agencies, what we are seeing in the research and data that Rachel mentioned is we know a lot more about the transition to adulthood, not just for youth in foster care, but across the population. And again, if any of you have sons and daughters that are 20, 21, 22, 23, you have probably noticed that transition to adulthood is a lot longer now. And that's for a lot of reasons. It's because of the high cost of higher education, the economy. So we have started to move to where we are supporting and looking at health insurance and other things to their mid-20s. And our child welfare system or other systems haven't caught up for our most vulnerable youth. So again, I think the child welfare system needs to do a lot more to improve this process, but I think we need to look to other agencies to help so that that bridge at 21, 22, 23, that there is more support. But again, I think having this prohibition and some really clear expectations is going to make agencies do what they should have done years ago and should be doing now. I think when you ask counties to count certain things and you hold them accountable, it does move people to maybe be creative, to open up the table, ask for the housing agencies to come in, ask for the mental health agencies to come in. How can we support these young people? It's not all child welfare, but they need to lead this.
And if I may, I'd just like to add on to what Jenny was saying. But I think that one of the things we can do that does not cost any money is we can eliminate the goal of APLA for any youth under the age of 18. When a youth has that goal, the county agency automatically assumes they are that youth is not going to achieve permanency. Efforts to locate a permanent option often stops. So I think that changing that aspect of allowing that goal for those youth changes practice as a result and really has them focus on, okay, permanency and those independent living skills. The other part that I wanted to plug was the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018 included the Family First Prevention Services Act. Under that, there is an opportunity to extend Chafee aftercare services to the age of 23. Meaning that the county child welfare agency doesn't have to stop offering housing services or linkage to community services or case management at age 21, but can actually offer that to age 23.
Thank you. Representative Howard.
Hi, I have a question about the multiple placements in foster care. So obviously, if there were stable placements. Children would not be bouncing around to 18 or 19, which even far fewer are typical. So what can we do to attract or recruit better foster parents, basically? This is obviously a failure of the system to find the right foster parents and a failure of foster parents to not be able to adequately do their job.
So again, under Family First Prevention Services Act, the state has to look at national model licensing standards that really provides guidance for high quality foster care, as well as breaking down barriers to children and youth being placed with kin. There are regulations that oftentimes become barriers to kin being fully licensed and being approved. So that is one process, as well as there is opportunity under Family First to really look at receiving federal funding to recruitment and retention of high quality foster homes as well.
And I think there is a lot of good work being done on this, but I think you're right. As Rachel said, most people within the field will say it's less recruitment and more retention. And I think what that tells us is that, as we mentioned with supporting kinship caregivers, we're not investing in those crucial resources, those families, whether they're related or kin or unrelated, who are saying they want to step up to the plate. And we have, Gary Krentz from the Resource Family Association was here, but had to go up and meet about the tuition waiver bill for older youth in foster care. He really speaks to how you can effectively support resource parents, particularly those who are caring for older youth. And it can be done, but I think it does take a financial investment and also a skill investment. We need to provide the training. We need to be there for them when there are bumps in the road. We have some good models. Gary Krentz's agency is a great example. The Quality Pairing Initiative is an initiative that's across the country and is now working in Philadelphia. And what it attempts to do is really build on the skill and strength of resource parents and help them tell us what is it they need to be able to support young people. So I think we really need to take advantage of all those opportunities. And one of the things I think we really have to stop saying is young people are not hard to place. We are having a hard time placing them and need to strengthen the families and help back them so that we can make that possible. And I think when we do focus on retention, that we can do that. We're seeing some great models across the country. In Illinois, there's a great resource family mentoring program. So they're using resource parents, and that's what we call foster parents, to provide support to other foster families. And that has been incredibly effective in meeting those at the middle of the night, I don't know what to do, and the call to the peer to get support rather than a call to the child welfare agency saying, come and pick up this child. That's what we need to avoid. And so I think there is a lot of things we can do, but we really do love in Pennsylvania the creativity and autonomy that we give counties, but some of these issues we do think there has to be more leadership at the state level because, as Marcia said earlier, it shouldn't matter which county you are, what services you get, that there should be some things that all young people have access to, and still allow creativity and flexibility within each county, but really provide guidance and direction on some of these things that we think are kind of the backbone and foundation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Kale.
You'd made mention that they start transition at 14. Who is they? Is that the caseworker?
Oh, so the obligation of the law is that the child welfare agency, and that can be, CYS
Sure.
or a private provider,
And
should start planning with the young person.
And how often a week do they meet with the children?
So it does depend. Under the law, the case plan needs to be revised every 6 months. Caseworkers have to see young people once a month, but chances are they're seeing other people that are involved in their case. There's a lot of private providers involved. You heard the independent living services. So there's going to be variation, but that case plan with that transition plan should be revised.
And these caseworkers have 30 kids that they're working with at a time?
Yep, at least.
At least, yeah.
At least.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Toohill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, well, both of you have done such a phenomenal job, and thank you for your tenacity with regard to these issues. So when we're talking about, these are Pennsylvania's children, so 8,000 children that are at this transitional age, so they're all of our children. And when we look at the children in our own homes, we talk about things like college and accessibility to college. If kids in my house want to go to college, we get to talk about that, and it's something that is also planned for. So do you have new numbers or more recent numbers on college? Because I know it used to be a very abysmal graduation rate. It was like a 3% graduation rate was the number of a former foster youth getting to go to college and actually being able to have enough support and help and networking that you're able to get through and graduate. Do we have any new numbers on that?
I don't think we have new Pennsylvania numbers. What we do have, and Cindy Gore is in the audience. I'm not going to pick on her or call on her, but I'm going to ask her to correct me if I get this wrong. One of the numbers we can use that at least shows us how many young people around who have a foster care history are using what's called the CHAVI Education and Training Grant. That's something that youth who are in foster care at age 16 or older are eligible for. That's not going to tell you the whole universe of who's getting to college or training. It's used for both, but it's going to give you a general idea, and that's, I think, 392. And that does not, though, tell you completion, but that at least gives us some numbers. And as I mentioned, some of our advocates are meeting with Representative Sunny today to talk about the tuition waiver, which we hope would provide another support for young people for higher education and training. But so one of the things that that bill has is a request as part of the bill for data collection, because it is always challenging, and you all have been right to ask for numbers. We're not keeping track of a lot of these things, and it's really key to be calculating things, because so we can have a good response. We want to know if we're doing good enough. We want to know what we need to improve, and so part of that tuition waiver bill is so that we do more data collection around how many youth in foster care are entering higher education, at least in the Commonwealth, for the schools that are in Pennsylvania. And so we hope we would be able to speak more about that. Hopefully that bill will be passed and that we'd have more of that data. But we do think, family is so important, and we think education is as well. So we hope that that would be part, again, of that whole safety net and infrastructure we want to help build for young people. And I think that's a good example of us saying it's not just child welfare. It is the higher education institutions. They need to pitch in too, because these are their kids as well. So Representative Tewell, we hope to have more numbers too, and we hope that those numbers can improve.
Thank you.
Anything else? With that, once again, we cannot tell you how grateful we are to all of our testifiers. Real eye-opener. I do want to explain for those of you who have not been at a hearing like this before, or an informational meeting, members do come and go because I believe there were 3 mandatory voting meetings today. So I just need for you to understand that that's why we're taping it, so those members can, and other members, can watch this later. So again, it's not fallen on deaf ears. We thank you so much. You were wonderful, and thank you for teaching us on this important issue. Have a great day.
Do you mind if we recognize some great people in the
Absolutely.
audience?
Go right ahead.
We were lucky to get the opportunity to testify, but we have a lot of experts and advocates that we work with, and I might not get them all, but Rick Azzaro from Diacon
Hello,
Family
Rick.
Resources, Cindy Gore from the Child Welfare Resource Center, I think Don Holden from Turning Points for Children. They do a lot for older youth, but one of the model programs is Youth Villages Life Set, and we really think that program is excellent and hope it can be a model, because when you ask who can help, what's models for doing better transition planning, that's a great model, and it's now being utilized at the end of the system. We hope that it could be maybe front-loaded more so that we do start earlier, and I probably missed a couple people.
Gary
but
Prince was here.
Oh, yes, Gary Krentz from Resource Family Association. So we just wanted to say the work we do is with a lot of great partners, and if I missed anyone, but we have a lot of experts who want to help and work with you all. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we have materials over here if you want some hard copies.